Oh, and just how many would a small army be then? The colonel asked, now intrigued. Adam decided he would do some posturing of his own, despite his better judgment, screaming for himself to appear as wallpaper. That depends, ma'am. Are you asking about the first operation, second, or both combined? He said, before the captain could answer. You've been on 2 then? She waved a hand in a show of mock civility. Do tell. Adam counted on his fingers humorously, taking way too long to answer, a brief flash of anger crossing the officer's face before he decided to tone down the bullshit. Well, if I'm being honest, I lost count after a dozen, but it's not more than 50. Drop in the bucket, really, once you add my pre- and post-occupation activities. So, you were a soldier before we arrived then, she said, clearly allowing a modicum of respect in her voice for the, as she now realized, experienced male soldier. Yeah, I left the service before you guys got there, but got involved with the resistance for a while before I saw the Empress's light. Can you blame a guy? No, I suppose not, she said with a smile. It's expected for a male to react emotionally and illogically at something like that. Thankfully, before the conversation could devolve any further, Grim grabbed his arm and pulled him towards the door. I apologize, Colonel, but I have to get my pot of chow, and afternoon exercise after that. It was certainly lovely running into you again, Grim exclaimed, clearly trying to get the fuck out before the conversation went anywhere she didn't like. You as well, Captain. Enjoy your exercise, the other team's officer said, a grin turning predatory. I hope you pass election, recruit. With that, the pod closed behind them, leaving Grim and Adam a few meters behind the rest of the pod. That was dangerous, Adam. I know, but I wasn't going to just sit there and let her start shit without a response, he replied. Listen, just don't talk to officers without being prompted from now on, okay? A lot of them are nobility, and will certainly not be as understanding as I try to be. Yes, ma'am, Adam replied, abashed. In short order, they all filed into a nearby building, and fell into the line leading to a small bar, where Shulvanti male and female workers were dutifully handing out food to the Marines and special operators. As the group hurriedly ate, Adam did his best to ignore the stares to the patrons of the dining facility. He was thankful, however, that the majority of the stares had gone from lustful to now genuinely curious, now that he was wearing his commando uniform. They left, and Grim led them to their home complex, instructing them all to change into exercise uniforms, and to meet her in the basement gym of their complex. Except for Adam. He was to work on getting Pat for his departure the next morning. When they went upstairs, Ferry dragged him into her room, pulling him in for a deep and loving kiss. Clearly she wanted her time, as it were, him having spent all day manoeuvring with Slip and the sim pods. Wait, he thought. Was that what she wanted to talk to the captain about earlier? He started to chuckle after breaking Ferry's kiss, tilting her head slightly in confusion. Are you and Slip already taking turns with me? He asked, continuing his giggling. She crossed her arms, doing her best to suppress a grin. I don't know what you're talking about, the large woman stated before continuing. And also, don't you have to go make sure you're packed? Ferry, I have 5 things, and 2 of them are staying here. No, I don't have to pack yet. Oh, so me and Slip are objects now, she playfully chided. I swear to fuck your dens. No, my plate carrier and gas mask, he replied, still laughing as he turned to leave the room. Hey, Adam? Ferry asked. Yeah, babe? Don't fail. You need to come back. Those guys won't go easy on you. I should fucking hope so. Joining the most fierce special operations branch in the galaxy shouldn't be fucking easy, right? He asked, desperately trying to lighten the mood. You're right, Adam, she replied, tone darkening significantly. I barely made it through. Barely. Just come home to me, okay? That shook Adam. It reminded him of the way his wife, then girlfriend, had asked him to return from his final deployment. I will. Head swimming, he returned to his room and began to pack his uniforms, exercise clothes, and everything else he thought he might need for his 2.5-month excursion. He wondered what it would be like, as the Shulvanti already had a very different cultural mentality to their armed forces than his own. Hell, just their opinions on intra-unit romantic liaisons showed that much. He glanced at the small LCD screen that sat on the small writing desk, and decided that 6:30 in the evening was late enough for him to shower and head to bed. When finished, stepping out of his bathroom in just a towel, he noticed the mound in the blankets. Throwing on a pair of boxers, he stood up behind Ferry, pulling her into an embrace. Nuzzling her neck, he breathed in her lilac-y scent. Sleep took him quickly after. The events of tomorrow all but forgotten. The fuck am I watching here, Private? Adam demanded, looking over the shoulder of one of the computer nerds, tasked with passing through their post-operation data hall. The small facility they had raided, just on the inside of the green zone, had been indicated by locals to be some sort of information relay station from the ships that hovered in orbit. Their operation had gone smoothly, and they had collectively seized almost 2 terabytes of videos and other data. And that's why Adam was currently babysitting a tech nerd, barely out of high school, as he passed through the video footage and semi-classified documents they had got their hands on. "Well, sir, as far as I can tell..." "Don't call me sir, kid, I work for a living. It's Sergeant or Adam, got it?" "Yes, sir, Sergeant," the poor private stuttered. In the 3 years since the Shill invasion, the quality of recruits the Resistance Special Operations Company had gotten had diminished significantly. All the good operators were either dead, currently engaged, or had fucked off to God knows where. "Well, Private, I'm fucking waiting," said Adam, mildly annoyed now. "Well, Sergeant, it would appear we've misjudged the Shill slightly. This is apparently helmet cam footage from an interdiction of a slave trading ship. It would appear that a significant portion of their naval powers are currently engaged with tracking down, stopping, and rescuing slaves kidnapped by some other nation called the Consortium." "I'm sorry, did you say they're actively fighting a slave state?" "It would be more accurate to call it a Cold War, Sergeant. Based on the data gathered, there appears to be 3 major powers in the galaxy. The Perps, some bureaucratic mess called the Alliance, and then the Consortium," the analyst said, pausing to think about his next words before continuing. "As best as I can tell, the Imperium has taken a hardline stance against slavery over the last few centuries, putting them at odds with the Consortium, and leaving the Alliance to try and play mediator." Sighing, Adam pinched the bridge of his nose. This was bad. He was engaged in fighting the only state in the galaxy actively doing something to stop slavery. At this point, the Shill had already conquered the vast majority of his planet, and very few pockets of outright resistance still existed. He was honestly surprised they hadn't just glassed Afghanistan already. Sighing and shaking his head, he came to a decision. He was tired of war. He was tired of Alec pressuring him to carry out plans that would get him tried before whatever the Shill had that was an equivalent of the Hague. Most importantly, the rage he had felt after watching the Shill bombardment rip his wife and his home to shreds had waned over 3 years of constant conflict. The video on screen cemented his idea, as he watched the Marines in the video kill 2 armor-clad individuals, and they continued to a room where multiple species were locked in cages, chained to floors, and generally kept in the worst conditions imaginable. The Marines radioed for help in their vaguely Russo-Germanic-sounding language, before they moved to free the hostages. His stomach twisted when he saw a small girl of a vaguely fish-wound reptile hybrid-looking species. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, if he would hazard a guess. Her silver iris and black sclera radiated nothing but pure gratitude and love as she hugged the leg of the Marine that rescued her. He turned away from the sight, intent on following through with his plan. "Private, keep digging through the intel. I'm going to go for a walk." "And I'm not going to stop until I find a deep hole somewhere," he thought, as he walked out of the room quickly, intent on heading to his bunk, packing his things and leaving. He knew Alec wouldn't let him if he was caught, so he had one option. He was going to sneak out and never come back. A warm body turning in his arms woke Adam from his dreams. He looked at the time on the alarm clock and decided to get out of bed now. It was just after 5:30 in the morning, and he wanted to get a workout in before he left. He threw on his exercise gear as Ferry snored blissfully away in his bed. When he returned, nearly an hour later, she was awake and chatting with the captain, who was now in his room. He snapped her attention out of reflex more than anything, looking at the intimidating woman in her dress uniform. "Good morning, Captain. What can I do for you?" "Well, we got a few things on the docket before you leave today. First, we need to go get you something from the armory. Second, we need to pay a visit to the General. Third, I need to get you a damn omnipad loaded with a couple of orders from me. Get geared up and meet in my office in 10, okay?" "Yes, ma'am, I'll be there." With that, she turned and left the room, shutting Ferry and Adam inside before he moved to put on his armor. As he slipped his skin-tight suit on, he had to work hard to avoid grinning at Ferry's not-so-subtle attempts to ogle him without him noticing. "You're allowed to look at me, you know," he said, half-grinning. "I know that, it's just... most guys don't like it when a woman is too into them," she said, with a bit of hesitancy in her voice. Not this guy. It's nice to feel wanted." He turned his back to her after pointing to his backplate. "Mind clipping that one onto me?" "I can do it by myself, but it's kind of janky to get one-handed." She rose from the bed, walking slowly to him, and picked up the large plate. He felt, more than heard, as it clicked into place on his back before a pair of strong arms wrapped around his waist. "The next couple months are going to lick cunt," Frey said softly into his ear, clearly unhappy with the fact that he'd have to go soon. "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but there's nearly a 95% attrition rate, A dehab. Not the worst odds I've had for her. I remember this one time I had to fight several miles uphill with a wounded and very attractive teammate. I mean, that turned out okay. He laughed before continuing. I'll come home, don't worry. You better, she whispered. We're gonna miss you. We? Don't worry about it, she said, disentangling herself from the armor-clad Adam with a laugh. Now, grab your shit and head downstairs. I'll see you when you leave. He sighed dramatically, planted a kiss, and grabbed his bags to head downstairs. When he arrived in the captain's office, she was grinning. Something good going on, Captain? Well, our pod armorer will have a surprise that I'm sure you'll like. Come on, I'll lead the way. He followed her as she practically jogged out of her office, leading him through the winding hallways of the building. Arriving finally at a door that led to a small workshop, she opened it to reveal the same woman that had been stationed in the small armory on the ship. Corilla, right? He asked the 7-foot-tall woman behind the counter, as they made eye contact. Yep, that's me, she said, smiling, barely even noticing the officer in the room. Corilla stared dreamily at Adam, the gaze mildly off-putting with a slight twinge of madness behind her eyes. Ahem, the captain coughed. Corey, you had something for him. Clearly this brought the armorer's brain back from wherever it had meandered off to. She jerked upright and ran to a case in the back. She withdrew a heavily modified HSC-9 from the locker and brought it over to Adam. So, I spent the last few days doing some creative printing. I did some modifications to the function of your weapon after getting a chance to put my cunt rubbers on your human kinetic rifle. I've added a small laser diode to the side of the weapon, allowing you to have a visible and infrared laser. She grinned widely before continuing. I know you're probably used to shooting under night vision with them, judging from what documents and videos I could find from your old world military archives. So now that you can do that, redundant as it may be, with this. Thank you, he said, confused at just what she had done to the rifle on the table in front of him. Ooh, that's not even the best part, the very odd armourer continued. I've also really fucked with the internals. I printed an entire new lower system that has a reposition safety, charging button and battery release. In short, it functions like your old rifle. He picked up the alien carbine, noting the position of the safety just above where his thumb would sit, the small button where a standard AR mag release would be, and a circle on the left side of the weapon just above the magazine compartment. Pointing to the small circle, she continued. This charges the weapon. I'm sorry I couldn't make it look like your bolt release, but I figured you can adapt a little bit. Thanks, Corey. It would have been interesting to have to figure out one of these on the fly. Oh, just make sure you come back with it. I'm not done yet, she said, grin widening. I'm looking at reworking the entire cooling system. It would make it slightly heavier, but in theory I could increase your per-shot power output, and the cost of capacity per magazine, of course. I don't know yet. I've only really seen it done in marksman conversions on the HS-R11, but you're used to using magazines of, like, 30 shots, right? Adam's eyes widened at the prospect. A laser rifle with the power to punch through armor easier would be an invaluable asset. When he attempted to return the rifle to her, she shook her head. Nope, that goes with you to selection, along with this. She handed him a sidearm that had clearly gone through some modifications of its own. I had this as a project for a rainy day. Originally I wanted to make a pistol with a retracting stopper needle, giving her sidearm a little more effective range. Instead it's yours now. The weapon looked like the standard Imperial handgun, but had a small L-shaped protrusion that folded to the right-hand side of the weapon. Folding it out, he brought it to his shoulder, testing its size and weight. It looked and felt vaguely reminiscent of a few machine pistols he had used back on Earth. Do you have a holster for it? He asked, reaffixing the small stock. Yep, fresh off the printer. She grabbed an object off the bar next to her and vaulted it over. She then knelt next to Adam and clipped it to his waist. It slid the weapon into the holster, which is more like a V-shaped clip that ran over the trigger guard. She nodded and went to retrieve another object, one he clearly recognized. His knife had a new sheath, much like his old Kindex one. The large woman knelt directly in front of him, far too close for comfort to the front of his skin-tight suit. She clipped the sheath in the exact same fashion he had had it affixed to his old battle belt, just to his front and slightly offset to his right. She stood up, slightly blue in the face, and smiled. All set, the large woman spoke. Her childish grin belying the fact that she was still a 7-foot-tall murder tank. This is as close as I can get you to home on such a short notice. When you get back, I should have more modifications ready. She bounded back over the counter to her previous position, clearly waiting for his response. Thanks. I'm sure I won't get much use this election, but the effort is appreciated. Adam was feeling decidedly awkward around the woman. She was acting like he used to when he was badly trying to flirt. Maybe his and Farilla's actions had rung the proverbial company dinner bell, and this thought was only reinforced by his newfound knowledge of the ubiquitous Shilvanti polygamy. The captain quickly manoeuvred him out of the room and back down the hallway after saying their goodbyes, leading him to a large doorway deeper in the building. The plaque on the wall next to the door read, General Amaya, followed by a slightly smaller text, Commander, Empress's 2nd Commando Company. Well, Adam, this is it. In all honesty, I don't know why the General requested to see you before your departure, and frankly it makes me uncomfortable. Whatever she says, just don't try and start shit like you did with the other pod yesterday. She eyed him with a knowing glare. Wouldn't dream of it, ma'am, he replied sarcastically, as she knocked on the door. Enter! Came the response from inside, and the duo entered the office. A grey-haired Shorvanti woman sat behind a large desk. Her broad shoulders, scarred face, and hard eyes communicated to Adam that this position was one earned through blood, violence, and hard work, rather than political savvy. She smiled predatorily at him as he entered, tossing an electric pad on the desk. Well, well, if it isn't the man of the hour himself, please sit if you like, she gestured to a chair opposite hers. Adam sat, taking the order as what it was, instead of the suggestion she had phrased it to be. He set his modified rifle next to himself, leaning it against the chair as he did so. You wanted to see me, General? Yes, I did. I'm going to cut right to the chase. Some of the nobility are not happy with myself and Grimena, Adam. The idea of a human going through selection, and a male no less, makes them nervous. They don't like the idea of you learning secrets that you could pass back to your friends on Earth, she said, her face serious. Last I checked, I don't have any friends left on Earth, ma'am. Not even, Alec Carver, she said, glancing back at her omnipad briefly. The question sent his stomach spiraling into his colon. She knew about his past, and more specifics than anyone else. Don't lie to me, Adam. I like to think I've put the reports I received on my newest recruit together as best as possible. I know about Dallas. I know about your operation in Denver. Most importantly, I know your wife was killed in an orbital strike during the initial days of the invasion. Well, he started, before the General cut him off again. I've worked in intelligence for nearly 12 years, so I like to think I can assess people fairly well. In truth, I don't blame you. If Sanyos, my husband, was killed by an invading force and ridden off by their commanders... Let's see, what does it say again? She said, picking up the pad and sliding a finger across it. Collateral damage. With no one being punished for the act, I'd probably start killing shit too. What I want to clarify, however, is that there's only one thing that stopped me from slamming you in front of a tribunal. And that is, ma'am? He asked nervously as she paused. Why'd you leave? And I don't mean your old unit. I can understand why a distinguished soldier like yourself would leave once they started killing civilians. What I want to know is why you stopped fighting us altogether. If you can tell me that, you get to leave this office as a soldier, rather than a prisoner. Adam felt the urge to grab his rifle, kill the General, and run. He didn't want this part of his past to be dredged up again. But he knew he was outmatched, and the calmer part of his mind prevailed. If he was going to live through this, he had one option. The option that didn't involve a desperate last stand on an alien planet. Well, he exhaled. In truth, I saw your Marines freeing slaves on the periphery. The General half smiled and raised her brows, leaning closer. It was after a raid on one of your data facilities outside of Tuscon. I saw helmet cams from shore Marines fighting on board a slave ship, and the people they rescued. I also saw the documents that your officers sent to Alliance forces in the area, requesting aid in fighting the slavers, and their rejection. As far as I can tell, ma'am, the Imperium is the last bastion against slavery in the galaxy, with the other two powers either supporting it, or being too ineffective to do anything about it. He pushed his thumb into his temple as he continued. Over a century ago, my nation fought its own war about, among other things, slavery. It's not the side of history I want to be on, if I'm honest. After that hit me, well, I left. It, wasn't pleasant. Adam, said the General, laying the pistol on her desk from where she previously had it aimed at him from beneath the desk. Welcome to the Empress's Commandos. Show those bitches their selection humanity's fangs. He snapped to attention and delivered a Shorvanti salute, practically sending his chair flying backward as he did. The General chuckled at his display, as he heard Grim exhaling loudly through her nose behind him. Okay, here's what's going to happen, the General said, furiously tapping away on her pad. As of right now, everything that pertains to the past 4 years of your life has been locked behind royal-level classification. The only people who can look at this without the Empress's or Princess's personal approval are in this fucking room. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Why? He asked, somewhat confused. The Commandant Corps is in the personal service of the Empress, officially. Technically, there can be no loyalty other than to her. This part of your background would cast doubt on your loyalties to anyone that saw. Frankly, though, I believe the Empire needs humanity. I've seen the way your people fight, and I've been working on convincing the right people to start allowing humans to serve in the Empress's glorious military. That means, to borrow a phrase from your native tongue, you're my guinea pig, as it were, for enlistment of your entire race. If one of you can pass selection and serve honestly in the personal dagger of the Imperial family, then I'm sure that will make the barrier to entry for the rest of your kind easier. You're going to allow humanity into the military? Asked Grim from behind him. Well, Captain, if Adam can do it, I'm sure others can. Why pass up good talent? My thoughts exactly, General, replied the practically beaming Grim. Alright, you two, get the fuck out of my office. Adam, best of luck. You'll need it. The pair saluted, and quickly left the room, and quickly moved through the hallway. Should have told me, Adam, the captain spat. Told you what? That I spent the last 4 years of my life working with war criminals? That I'm still haunted by the idea of my dead wife? How would you think that would have gone over? The captain just grunted, as she led him along, the uncomfortable silence stretching, until they reached the shuttle pad where Ferry and Slip stood together, quietly chatting. Ferry rushed to hug him, bidding him goodbye while clearly trying to keep her emotions in check. Slip stood stoically to her side as she embraced him. Adam, said the captain, after the pair broke their embrace, handing Adam an omnipad of his own. I'm sending you with recruitment authority to selection. We need a medic, and if you run into anyone that would fit our unusual cadre, don't be afraid to pull them from the masses. Will do, ma'am, he said, accepting the rectangular device. Thank you for trusting me. Don't let me down, she said, spinning and walking off before adding over her shoulder, and don't die. Chuckling, he turned to his girlfriend, who promptly kissed him as Slip opened the shuttle door. Much to his surprise, as he extended a fist to Slip after breaking Ferry's embrace, Slip paused and looked at Ferry, who promptly nodded. Slip then grabbed Adam into a deep hug, pulled his head down, and kissed him deeply. Adam's brain locked up at that moment, before Slip pushed him into a seat on the shuttle, smiled hungrily, and shut the door on him. What just happened? He thought, as he felt the shuttle shift and take off.